Okay, we're going to get started in just a second. Just have to activate all the different platforms. Okay, as the title says, Nuff said, Seder Carbon Pesach is a public service from Evan Shasia. It's on tomorrow. I'm recording this today. Listen to this tomorrow after Chatzot, after Zman Mincha, which historically is the time of Zman Carbon Pesach, should be Neshama Purim Svasenu. To the best of my memory, I looked over the Rambam in Parakav Hilchos Carbon Pesach, which I want to blast through together with you. It's only 20 halachas. We'll do it in 20 minutes. It has as much detail, maybe even a little bit more, but it's not too wordy. Then, the Kitzer Seder Carbon Pesach of the Ivets that's printed a lot of Haggadahs and I am a Rambamist. My Rabbeim, Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg and Moshe Shapiro, were big Rambamistim. They had different approaches to the Rambam philosophically, but the Rambam was the center of their worlds. I was going to, if I could have done this earlier in the day, I would have told some stories about Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg and Moshe Shapiro and the Rambam, but it's, feeling the pressure. It's B'dikas Chametz in another, hour plus. So we really got to get going with this, but I'm doing this today for the sake of tomorrow. You should listen to this on Erev Pesach, during the Zman, that's Zman Korban Pesach, and it should be in the Shama Parnas Vasenu. Baruch should help. We should be Zocha. We have to show to Baruch we really want it by learning this. It's printed in Haggadahs also, but I figure this will help people, at least help people understand. And then you could also, it's better to also say it in the Haggadah, not just listen to what I'm saying, because it should be in the Shama Parnas, as it were, you're davening, the Seder Avodah should be instead of the Avodah. Hashem should help us. Who knows? We might be Zoch already tomorrow, the way the world's going. Anyways, and it's another thing. I want to need as many schuyot as possible for where the world's headed, man. Okay, enough said. Well, talk about Esser Makas. See what you're going to see tomorrow night. All right, it should be only Negof Lemitzrayim and to those, and Refuah Yisrael. Amen. Okay, so the one thing that I'll have to speak out outside is that, of course, a Carbon Pesach needs to be shechted lemenuyav. You have to be appointed while the animal is still alive, and it should be for only people who are kosher to partake in the Carbon Pesach, and it should be the right amount of people that between them all they can everyone gets a kazayis, and between them all they consume it. There's a problem if, let's say, one person wants to take on the whole lamb himself, but he can't consume it. That's a problem. It's a heater to do with more than that should just not be all yoloti if you have a really hearty appetite, as it says Ya'asu also, and all the lachas of the minuyim of being appointed to be part of a chabura on a korban is in Perak Sheni. I don't put that in Perak Sheni. So that's like the one prat that's missing from Parakaf, where you pretty much blast through the whole Seder of Korban Pesach quite thoroughly. And I just want to do it together with you. It should be a Zikui Arabim. We all need this now at these times. Okay. So this is all in Parakaf Hilchos Korban Pesach, which is the first set of halachas in Sefer Korbanos. Okay. Mitzvah say l'shchot Pesach barba chodeshis chatzos. It's a mitzvah say to shech the Korban Pesach on the 14th of Nisan, which is tomorrow after chatzos hayom. And what you shecht is either from the sheep or the goats, and it has to be a male sheep or male goat that's a year old. Both men and women, everyone's chayiv in this mitzvah, men and women. Now, someone who, openly, annuls this, or he doesn't care. He's not bringing his Korban Pesach on the 14th of Nisan, and he could have. He was able to. He was not tamei, right? He was, and he wasn't far away from the Beis HaMikdash. It was a reasonable distance, which may be covered over here, right? So, and he could have, and he didn't. And he did it on purpose. He's chayiv kores, and of course, b'shogeg. All shogeg is not punishable by kores. B'shogeg is potter. And the best azor b'shkishar kachim, it has to be shechted in the azor in the base midrash like all other korbanos. And the Ram says, even in time when it's mutter, right, to have bamos, before it was exclusively only the base. Even the Shah of Heter bamos, they would not be makriv the pesach b'bamas yachid, and a bama that individual, private altar, a person built when that was mutter. Still on a bamas yachid, you don't bring a carbon pesach. Like anyone who would bring the carbon pesach on a bamas yachid when this strictly is historical. Okay, this hasn't been true for a long, long time. But when there was heter bamas, if you brought it on a heter on a bamas yachid, you get malchus. Right? You cannot sacrifice the pesach in one of your gates. So now, the Masorah was that, not in one of your gates it is coming to prohibit, right, shechting the carbon pesach on a bamas yachid, even when bamos were mutter. Shechita pesach achar chatzos, as we said, shechita pesach after chatzos. Vim shechtu karam chatzos paso. You shecht it before chatzos, it's paso. There's also ela achar tamid shel ben arbaim, but the custom is to only shecht it after the tamid shel ben arbaim. And not just that, but also that we bring the Ketores of Ben Arbaim, and also we did the lit the menorahs, the menorah. So then from that point onwards, you shecht the Karban Pesach until from that point till the end of the day. Kosher. Now, if you did it after Chatzos, but they didn't bring the Karban Tov of Ben Arbaim, it's still kosher. It's still kosher. Right, it's b'diavad, but it's still kosher. But, however, it's still kosher so long as someone's got to mix the blood of the Pesach, right, to keep it liquid, because the dam, right, the blood of the carbon tobit has to be thrown first. So if the shechita is kosher, right, but you can't do zrika sadam of the carbon pesach before the zrika sadam of the carbon tumit. So you gotta catch the blood. I believe a Kohen has to catch the blood, right? Kabbalah onwards is mitzvahs kudah, but we'll see it inside. You gotta stir it and keep the blood liquid, because the dam of the carbon tub has to be thrown on the mizbech before the dam of the carbon pesach. So the shechita is kosher, but you got to keep the blood liquid, so it should be able to be thrown on the mizbech after the dam of the carbon tub was thrown on the mizbech. Right? So kosher, but of course, even this is just the way it should be done. But if you jumped the gun and the dam of your carbon pesach was thrown on the mizbech before the dam of the tamar of ben arbaim, it's also kosher. All right. If you shechted the pesach at its proper time, but you still had a kazayas of chametz in your household, right? Meaning that you owned, right? That you shouldn't have had, right? Which is, because before chatzos you got to get rid of all your chametz, even midoraisa. Ach bayorshim tashbishus over them, it comes to include the second half of the first day, right? So if you shechted the Pesach when you had still a kazayas chametz in your domain, and you should not have, you get malchus. Do not sacrifice with chametz the dam of my sacrifice, which Chazal interpret means do not sacrifice the Pesach, means shech the Pesach, means shech the Pesach while the chametz is still around in your domain. And you have not gotten rid of it, which includes you have not had sold it. It's still in your domain in a way that's usher. You're not allowed to shech the Korban Pesach under those circumstances. So now, God forbid, that's what you did. All right. So everyone who's involved in the avoda is going to get malchus. Right, and it's even if only one guy ruins it for everybody. Even if one guy had chametz in his rishus, so the guy who shechted it, and there's chametz in one of the bnei chabur that's appointed on the Korban Pesach, so the guy who shechted gets malchus, and the guy who zorik the dam gets malchus, and the one who sacrifices the organs and the fats that need to be sacrificed on the Korban Pesach, right? If if they did it under the conditions that one of they or anyone else that was appointed Korban Pesach had chametz in his reshus, they get malchus for that avera, but the carbon is kosher. The carbons are, so it's a violation, and you get malchus for it. The one who gets malchus is the one who actually either shechted or threw the dam, or sacrificed the emurim, right? Burnt the emurim, right? So because they who did these actions will get malchus if they or any one of the bnei chabura had a kazayis chametz in their reshus, but the carbon pesach remains kosher. Dam ha-pesach ton shvicha k'nei, so the dam of the pesach, we said the blood of the korban needs to be thrown at the foundation of the mizbeach. Ve'achar sheshovchin dom mafshid on so v'korban bitno motziin esemura v'maktin so chalavin kol zevach derech. And after the blood has been thrown on the mizbeach, that's when the animal is ripped open. It's skinned. It's skinned, and they crack open its stomach, and they take out the emurim, all right, and they sacrifice the fats, right, and they have to do each animal, each korban separately, right. Maybe the base of Yerushalayim, and then whoever owns, the Pesach takes it with the skin, and brings it to his house, the house that he's staying at. Right, in Yerushalayim, in biblical Yerushalayim, right? And he roasts it, right? As you know, korban has to be roasted. V'ochel erev, and he eats it at night. If you left the parts that meant to be sacrificed, and they spent overnight, so now those those fats that had to be sacrificed become pasul belina because they're left overnight. Right, and you are over on lotasa, you get a negative, you transgressed a negative commandment by doing so. As the Paul says openly, the fats of my sacrifice should not, wait overnight until morning. Now, even though you've done a negative commandment, you don't get the conventional punishment of the negative commandment. Which is malchus, lashes, because it's a lav she'ein bo ma'isa. You were passive. It's a lav fi she'ein bo ma'isa. Now, what's very interesting is that there's another reason, because it's also lav anitak la'aseh, which also ain't lo kinalav, because you have to, the nosar has to be burnt. Now, maybe I'm mixing something up. The Rambam brings I guess because it's a more basic reason, ein bo ma'isa, but it is a lav anitak la'aseh to the best of my memory, but we will see. One could sacrifice the fats of the Pesach all night long until the break of dawn. Now, that which we say, this is when the 14th comes out. Right, because the fats of Shabbos, of the cross of Shabbos, are also sacrificed on Yom Tov. Right, but if the 14th came out on a weekday, we do not sacrifice the chalavim of a Yom Chol on Yom Tov. You got to finish this before Yom Tov comes in, right? This is interesting. I have to admit, I don't the Yavitz does not bring this halacha in his, he doesn't bring all these, he just summarizes the way it was done. It's good to know, right? Let me confess, I have not learned these sugyas in Maseches Pesachim in very many, many years. I'm just relying on the Rambam and teaching him literally, right? So it's ironically, you have a leniency of, when the 14th comes out on Shabbos, to do sacrifice the chelbei psachim, right, all night long, right? But if the 14th, like this year, comes out on a weekday, you got to finish sacrificing it before Yom Tov comes in, right? Pesach nishchat b'shlosh kitas, right? The Pesach is sacrificed in 3 groups, right? 3 groups, go into the Azara. 3 different groups, at different times. All right, as it says, Right? Should never is called kol kadas. All right. So it says, and they sacrifice kol, the whole kahal congregation, ada, another synonym for congregation, Yisrael, kal adas Yisrael, right? So kol adav Yisrael, right? So it's three synonyms for public, right? All in the same pasuk. Teach you three publics, three groups. It'll be done in course of three groups. There should be at least a minimum of 30 people in each group. Oh, what happens if only 50 people are bringing a carbon pesach? What do? Right? So now let there be 30 that shech. Yotzim asara. So only 10 of those who shechted already should leave the asara. V'nechasim asara, right? And the other 10, the remaining 10, another 10 come in. 10 out of the remaining 20 come in. V'chozrin, v'yotzeh asara, and then also for the final 10, right? So only 10 of the 30 that were in the azara during the second session, only 10 will leave, and then the final 10 who haven't done yet come in. So there's always 30 in the azara. Okay. Right. Like let's say there are less than 50, because it's less than 50. We don't have this eights of 10 in, 10 out, 10 in, 10 out. Right. 10 rather 10 out, 10 in, 10 out, 10 in. Right. So Angel is a Pesach Atchila, right? So you should not shech the Pesach, right? Lechatchila v'imshachtu kosher, but if they did so, it is kosher. Or so v'imshachtu kulam bas achas kosher, all right, right? And if all of them did it at once, all 50, right? It's kosher. Ketzat, how should it go? Right? Nishcha, Ketzat Nishcha, rather, how was the Korban shechted? Right? I am just reading the Rambam, and I think I'm translating it accurately. I'm not holding in the sugya, which makes you feel bad. Every year I'm just somach on the kitzur it's written in Haggadahs and realize how little you know. God, right? But there's Kesef Mishnah, Lechem Mishnah, and you could find out what the Rambam sources are and why the halacha is the halacha, right? So Ketzad Nishchad, how is the Korban Pesach shechted? Nichsa Katarishoina, Achid Azar, Benoin Datos Azar, Matchil Nishchad Pischem. So of course, if we're talking about many, thousands and thousands of Jews, right? So you're not going to have a problem of having less than 30, right? So you have thousands of. So group number one goes in until it's packed, right? Right, until it's totally packed. V'nol and Datos Hazar, you lock the gates of the Azor. Matchil Lishchod Esem, they start shechting their Pesach. V'cholzman Shem Shochtim Umakriven, and so long as the shechita is going on and they're sacrificing, they're throwing the blood, and which we're going to describe in a second, and they're sacrificing the fats. So long as that's going on, Karm Levim Esahalo, the Levim read the Halo, right? Vim Gomra Halo Vadain Lo Shalma Katmil Hakrev. Now, if they finished Halo before this whole group, finished, the group number one finished doing their sacrifices, Shonim, they start Halo again. Vim Shonu V'lo Shumu Lakriv Mishalshin Umilam Lo Shushu, and in the event that right, theoretically, right, they didn't finish sacrificing even by the time they finished Halo the second time, then they read Halo third time. But the Rambam says, I believe this is Meforsh in Chazal, never happened that they had to say Halo a third time. On every reading of the Halo, they blow 3 tekiyas b'chatzos with the trumpets. Tekiya, trua, tekiya, tekiya, trua, tekiya. Vo vein lanu nesachim. Now, generally, by all other korbanos, there's nisuch hayayin, and that's when they blow, right? They blow the shofars and the trumpets, right? But by Korban Pesach, there's no nisuch hayayin. That's why they blow by the shechita. Right? So now the Kohanim stand in lines. Right, because as we're going to see, only the shechita could be done by Yisrael, right? Or everything else is mitzvahs kahuna, right? So the Kohanim stand in lines, and they have these vessels of silver and vessels of gold, for the bloods, right? Sure, cool. Kesef, sure, shakula zav, and that shouldn't look spotty. So if you in a row where there's silver, all the Kohanim will be working with silver. In a row where there's gold, all the Kohanim will be working with gold. And they didn't mix it up, some silver, because that doesn't look good. It's more beautiful, just silver, a line of just silver, a line of just gold. Right. Now these, I do believe, it's different sheets in Rishonim. It didn't have, according to some sheets, it was mamish like pointy on the bottom, that they should not put it down. It should not be put it down. That these, because if they put it down for a second, the blood may clot, and congeal. Right, shochet v'kibel hakohen. If the shochet, the shochet, he shechs, which, as we're going to see, it's even kosher bizarre, right? And the makabel, the kohen has to be makabel. The kohen has to receive the blood. And he passes on to his friend. The kohen that's next in line, and his friend to his friend. It's all kohanim in that line. Kadeshi dasa gram mitzvah. It's a dafka hidur that many people should be involved in the mitzvah. Ashkia dam etzel kohen goes on until the dam, the blood reaches the kohen that's nearest to the mizbeach. Shov chol shviras kadei. He spills it one spill parallel to against the yesod mizbeach. Umakabel mizrak echad male vachkach maser rekon. Now. So now they're passing back the empty one and they're receiving the full one. Receive the full one before you pass back the empty one. Okay? You should receive the full one with the blood that's coming before you pass back the empty one from the blood that was thrown on Yesod HaMizbeach. So now they hang it up and they skin the animal totally and they rip it open. And they cleanse, however they do it, the innards. So they get out the feces and all the other, waste, feces and secretions, right? Umotia emurim, and you take out the emurim, which is the part that's burned in the mizbeach, and also bekli, and you put it in a vessel, molchan, and you salt them, umaktir, and the kohen has to, burn them on the mizbeach. Kate Satosh, how do you hang the Korban Pesach and skin it? There were like pegs of metal that were embedded in the walls, in the walls of the Azara. All right, and that's where you hang the the carbon, and that's where you skin it, right? Let's say you ran out of pegs that are in the wall. There's just too many people. You take these very, thin and smooth pegs, and you put them on your shoulder and your friend's shoulder. So you put a peg, that's not too heavy and very smooth on your shoulder, and the shoulder friend. They put. So you line it up and you put the animal on top of those pegs that are on your shoulder and the shoulder of your friend, and that's how you position the animal to skin it and get the emurim out. Shomu me'akriv, say that this group finishes from bringing their korbanos, their korban pesach. So out goes the first group, and then comes in the second group. And then the same thing happens. Then the second group does the same thing, goes out, and then the third group goes in. Right, and the way that the first group is, the way the second group did it, which is the way the third group does it. All right, the way that's it. After the third group finished, that's the azor is full of blood. They have to wash the azor. Now, if the 14th came out on Shabbos, Carbon Pesach is Docha Shabbos. The way you do it on the weekdays, the way you do it on Shabbos. Right? Shabbos. Right? And we even wash the floor of the Azora on Shabbos because it's a solid stone floor. Right? It's not a dirt floor. Right? So it's a solid stone floor. Right? And we wash the Azor on Shabbos also. Because any Isser Drabanan that might be involved in washing it, there's no Isser Doraisa, right? And any Isser Draban that may be, right? Ain't Shvus B'Mikdash. That's halacha. We don't, no Drabanans apply in the Mikdash, even even if it's not Tzarach Avoda, because it's washing the Azora afterwards. So ain't Shvus B'Mikdash. Right, and he says he doubles out. It's just b'mikdash heterhu. Heter, smash. It's not even dochui. It's hutra, not chuya. This is what it sounds like. And kol echad ve'echad malachas pischal beso b'Shabbos. But here you got a problem. Shabbos, if 14th comes on Shabbos, is isra otzam rishus l'rishus. Not allowed to carry on Shabbos. What do you do? All right. So that rather the first group comes out and they're going to move further out and sit on Harabais, which had a din of Rosh Hashanah. Right, sit on Harabais, right? So they move the furthest out. You figure out why, because they have to make room for the second and the third group that are going to exit. So the first group moves all the way out to Harabais, but still Rosh Hashanah. Right? The second group comes out, and sits in the Chayil, which is outside the Azor. And the third group just stays put in the Azor. Right? Second group is in the Chayil, which is right outside, and the third group is further afield in the Harabais because you're not allowed to carry the Carbon Pesach to a house, on Shabbos. Right? Right, and they wait until Motzei Shabbos, and then on Motzei Shabbos, one carries it home and they roast it. Right? Right? Like we said, shechting the Pesach, throwing its blood, cleansing its innards, to get rid of the tzoa and the perish that we said, right? Vektachav, and to burn the fats that go on the dochas. That's all docha Shabbos. Just a korma Shabbos, and why is it docha Shabbos? Simple, because it's impossible to do it prior to Shabbos if the 14th comes out on Shabbos. The mitzvah is on that day, so it's not. You don't have to say, well, you could have done it yesterday. No, you couldn't do it. Right? The Torah gave a distinct time for Carbon Pesach. Shenemar b'modo at its time. But here, bring it in from outside of the Tchum to the to the Beis Hamikdash, cutting off a blister, which would possibly carbon, but it's but if you cut it off, it's kosher, right? Cutting off the a blister that because otherwise it's a Baal Mum, right? Right, with we're talking about cutting off the blister with a kli, with a vessel, which is Isser Doraisa, right? Bite it off is not an Isser Doraisa, right? So these things are not Tashar. Why? Because right, you could have done it Erev Shabbos. There was no excuse. So here's the cloud. Any mulacha involving the korban can only be done on Shabbos is docha Shabbos. It's something which could have been done Erev Shabbos. It's not docha Shabbos. Why don't you do it before? All right, but going back to the blister issue, right? Right, but if you cut off the blister, just with your hand without using a kli on Shabbos, you're chotek because that's only asur b'draban. It's also cut off a blister, only if it's with a kli, right? And that's also if it's moist. Right, but if the blister is totally dry, right, so then you can even cut it off with a vessel, because with a vessel on a dry blister, right, right, all the makars for all this are in the Nosei Kelim, Kesef Mishnah, Lechem Mishnah, right. If the blister is dry, even then it's not asur midoraisa, even if you cut off with a professional instrument, and we said Ein Shvus B'Mikdash, right. right? Right. Change the words call. Hey, Joseph, now the there's the mamche of which we said that I called it cleansing, but it's the mandatory avoda of getting the getting the, as we explained, the feces and those secretions out, right? But how about just stam washing it, or roasting it, right? Roasting the korban pesach. Those are Shabbos. Those are not those are sharei efshar la'asos and la'achar. You can do it after Shabbos. Right? You can roast, wash it off and roast it after Shabbos. On the 14th, you just have to sacrifice it. But the roasting of it to eat it and the cleansing of it, that you could do after Shabbos. So therefore, it's not Docha Shabbos. So let's say you didn't bring a shchita knife, right? You forgot your shchita knife to bring it before Shabbos. And it's something which you could do before Shabbos. You can't bring it on Shabbos, right? Elonosa ben Karya Keves, O Betzarmo Umakisho Achevil Azor Makdir Sham. Is a famous story that Yehilo forgot the halacha. Am Yisrael figured it out themselves, right? So what you could do is put the knife. You can't carry it, right? But you could stick the knife in the wool of the animal, right? And kind of kick the animal along, right? And the animal will be the one that carries the knife in, right? Right, and you will be magdish the animal there, right? Right, you'll be magdish because you can't have kachim b'chutz. You're magdish the animal in the azara. You can't bring chulin lazara, but you can't use the animal if it's kodesh outside, right? So the animal is still chulin, right? And you're within the tchum. You're within the tchum. Right? You're within the tchum already. Right, you stick the knife on the animal that's still chulin in the wool, kick it, make it. The animal should carry the knife, and then you're magdish it, at the azara. That's where you magdish it, and that's where you shacht it, and the animal is the one who carried the knife. Right, right. V'afal pishu mechamer b'shas mechamer klachad yadu mipnei mitzvah mutter. There's an iser lav. It's not a chi of skill, if I remember correctly, but it's a lav called mechamer, making your animal do work for you on Shabbos, making your animal do work for you, which going on stam work. Stam work is mechamer. There's chas v'shom, to do charisha with a shore, since that's the derech of charisha, as I understand, as I remember, it's a chi of skill. This is mechamer. You get the animal to do work for you on Shabbos. Not talking about like charisha, that's the derech to do it. With a shore. So it's mamish chayrish mamish, as I remember, right? But this is in general, getting an animal to do work for you on Shabbos is mechamer. It's a lav, right? But this is not kederach. You're not doing it in a conventional way. You're sticking the knife, in the wool. That's not a conventional way of getting an animal to do work for you, like carry for you, because you're sticking it in the wool, doing it in a klachyad in a shinui, and it's so it's gets downgraded to a drabanan and Chazal or matter for the mitzvah for you to do your mitzvah of korban pesach. Is a pesach, right? But as going back to the Rambam's doubling down on the case that the animal that's carrying the knife for you is chulin, right? Right, that you did not sanctify it yet to be your korban pesach, right? And because you got a problem if you said ze pesach, why, right? If you sanctified it already. Right, you have to sanctify it. You can't bring chulin lazar. You have to sanctify it at the azara. Right, at the azara, can't bring chulin lazar. All right, now you could theoretically sanctify it outside and bring it as a it's already hekdesh, and you got to bring it to sacrifice it. That's how most korbanos work. You say how korban nedavi or menadev, it's already kodesh outside of the azara, and you bring it in for sacrificing. And you can't bring chulin la'azar. You have to be magdish it at the azar latest, right? But you could be magdish it before. Here's the problem: why this case is dafka with the carrying of the knife in the wool is dafka be'ema chulin, because if it's kodesh already, you're not allowed to do avoda with kachim. It's meila, right? You're not allowed to be oved with kachim, right? Right, be'ova kachim. U'emay to lagdish pischo b'shabes ho v'kovil zman mutar lagdisho b'shabes. Right. Right. So now, why did Chazal allow you to delay? To magdish your Pesach on Shabbos. I guess you're not supposed to do it on. I'm not know much about kachim, and I got to do something about it. Oh man, especially if we want Mashiach to come, got to show we want kachim. Bli neder, bli shvur. I got to. All right, so you're not allowed to be magdish on Shabbos generally, but Chazal allowed you to be magdish your korban Pesach. You shouldn't be magdish kachim on Shabbos, right? But your Pesach, since this is the Zman, Chazal let you. They did not. They didn't ban you doing the kachim, like other korbanos. You shouldn't do it on Shabbos. Over here, they let you do it on Shabbos because it's the Zman. So you're being magdish bismano, even though you could do it beforehand also, but you're being magdish bismano. And same thing holds true on that. Any korban you bring on Yom Tov, right? Right. Korban chagiga you bring on Yom Tov, you can be magdish it on Yom Tov also. Right. And by the way, check me on all this. And these things that I may not be sure about, it's not like in the sikum of the Ivets you'll find anything clearer. I don't think he even addresses these issues. Okay. And again, this is just to help you if you could do it yourself. But I see that the Rambam, deals with it, and it's not much longer than the sikum of the Ivets. Pesach, v'nitzu bal mum o treifa, harei ze shochet acher, ben kol ben b'Shabbos, afilu mea zachar ze shol v'lachad sheich she'echad, v'ashesh v'yidach sheni sharei onasu. Let's say you shech the korban, the Pesach, comes up that's treifa. Treifa is possible, right? You shech another one, it's treifa. Shech another one, it's treifa. You keep on going. Not only a weekday, even on Shabbos. Keep on shechting. The shechting is docha Shabbos, and you keep on doing it. Your deadline is when night comes in, then it's too late. But then you're allowed to do Pesach Sheni because you were on Onus. Say no. V'shev Zorem Sham Now Shtachim V'Fanecho Shosh Bagei Kagos Sarsecha Shosh Barashon Yerkol Suchos Pei Rechecha B'Makom HaShev Char B'Chag Matzah Chag HaShuos Chag HaSukos Loris Pnei Reikom Ich Masa Dok V'Kasa Adnonecha Shenas Alach Ken Yirotzim B'Meira B'Yameinu. Don't answer Amen. You're not hearing this in real time. Okay, listen to this video right after this man of Carbon Pesach. We're going to do the sort of Rav Shamshon Master Palia also Bli Neder. See, it's going to have to be after B'dikas Chametz, Be'ezras Hashem. Okay, Sheniske. So we should go to Yerushalayim, V'noch Hashem Nazvachim V'Psachim.